Pickaxe.
Welcome to the Chance Encounters podcast. We've been operating board game cafes around the UK for about 6 years now. From family dues to hen dues, from first dates to breakups, we've seen it all and recommended a game. But now we're looking for a fresh challenge. Each week we'll be inviting a guest onto the podcast who'll come armed with an abstract and absurd scenario. And it's up to us to figure out what that situation calls for and recommend a game that'll totally topple their tower. I think that's third time now.
That's your go-to.
It is, but I wasn't prepared. I'm so sorry. Whichever game recommendation our guest loves the most will score a point. And at the end of the season, whoever has the most points will be declared the champion. No, the Titan of board games. Hi, I'm Richard. I'm one of the co-founders of Chance Encounters. I've been with them since the beginning. That's what founder implies. And I actually have only ever had 2 subscriptions to magazines. One is Tabletop Gaming Magazine. That you'll understand why that's important in a second. And second is it was actually a robot building magazine. It was literally like a week by week. It would send you pieces of a robot that you would slowly stitch together. And I always thought I was going to be an AI and roboticist. And here we are now.
Ooh.
Whoa. And with me, my host is Ben.
Hello, I'm Ben. I work with the Yogscast. I stream video games and board games. I'm a massive nerd and I love board gaming. But I don't know if I've ever had a subscription. Maybe to the Beano as a kid? I think that might be it.
Is that through the magazine agent, I suppose, at the time?
Yeah, I don't know. I think my parents sorted it out.
The classic, parents will just, they deal with it, it turns up, it's all good.
You know, you're old enough to read the Beano, you're probly not old enough to sort out your own subscription situations.
You weren't managing your own pocket money like at that time? They'll be like, it's actually 53p this week, so you're going to have to...
Yeah, I had one of those like receipt machines where you pull the handle and it prints it out and you're like, this week I can't afford these half-penny bears. I'll have to cut back on my sherbet fountains.
When penny sweets were actually penny sweets.
It's weird, isn't it? News agent sounds fine, but magazine agent sounds like, I've got a guy.
He's got like a trench coat.
I've got at least 20 in here. Which one do you want? And our guru for this week is Dickie.
Hi guys, I'm Dickie. I am the defending titan of board games.
You are.
Oh, nice.
And I actually completed 3 part works as a kid, which I'm very proud of.
What was the part work?
The part work is the like official title for those magazines where like you get the first issue 99p and then the rest are like 18 billion pounds.
Yeah, it only cost you £800 to build this race car over the course of 3 years.
But like part work is the official like name for those.
I didn't know that was even a thing.
I built a dinosaur skeleton. I got a load of rocks. I got a full rock collection. That was great. And I think I built a giant 3D moth as well.
They're minerals, not rocks.
Actually, like some of them were rocks and some of them were minerals. So
I'll have you know. Actually,
I read a whole magazine series about it. Actually,
did you also write your own reviews? I feel like that would be a very Dickie thing to do. You'd just be handing them out on the playground.
This rock, 8 out of 10.
Yes. And our guest host for this week is Christopher.
Hey there, I'm Chris Eggett. I am the editor of Tabletop Gaming Magazine, which is this very magazine here. Look, it's in print and real. You can touch it. You can read it with your eyes.
Would you like to confirm your identity to everyone?
Yes, I did walk in and say, look, do you know who I am? Because that's what I do. I go around just in case people who don't know who I am, which is quite reasonable. There's a picture of me inside, which is one of the funniest parts of the job.
For the audio version, you're just going to have to like believe us that actually happened.
Just Google me.
I love the idea
Good picture.
you got the train here, the conductor comes by, just like, have you got your ticket? And he's like, and she'll look at this magazine.
I'm always getting these with holes in, you know. So. But yeah, so we do the magazine, we do our live show, got that going on in September, and we've got lots of other exciting things going on right now, even like our awards, that's happening right now. We've got about a week probably to vote on them, if you wanted.
There you go.
To crown our winner. It's all publicly voted. So yeah, but I'm here to give you a difficult situation, I hope.
An abstract and absurd scenario, and it could be some abstract and mostly absurd. Who knows? We'll find out. That's a perfect segue. Would you like to introduce what your scenario could be?
Okay, so I have to credit Tim Clare, one of the writers of the magazine, and all-round good writer anyway. You may already know him. We had this conversation at UK Games Expo, okay, and he brought up the royal game of right, which is famously a not very good game that was buried with the Pharaoh.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so my scenario for you is we've all died.
Okay.
Obviously. Yeah.
We're in the afterlife. It's some kind of waiting room situation, some kind of limbo situation. We're not really getting into like a heaven and hell thing. I don't want to add any sort of really real danger or real metaphysical elements here, but we can maybe add them as you go.
Well, this makes sense. I mean, as board game enthusiasts, we have a lot of unfinished business in terms of like unplayed games. So there's no way we're moving on for a long time.
And so we all arrive and we say, I'm going to have to make friends here with all these people here. I might know some of them, but there's probably an admin system. It's very hard to find the people you want to talk to. So in the meantime, we should probably make friends. And so the question I asked him at this UK Games Expo a couple of years ago was, which board game would you bring to the afterlife with you? And so that's the thing. What are you going to use to bring to the afterlife to make friends with?
To play potentially for eternity.
There's also that element. Yes. What's so good?
Is there any board game that stands up for eternity?
I'll tell you what doesn't. The Royal Game of
I've never played it or even read the rules.
I got minor beef with the Royal Game of
Yeah, they should stick to building pyramids by the sound of it.
There's a to be fair, wonderful guy. I can't remember his name right now, but he works for the British Museum and is their like expert when it comes to like that kind of era and also kind of games in general. But they had a section on Radio 4 where they were getting people to kind of, this is just when Wingspan came out, and they were getting people to come in and talk about board games on Radio 4, and I was really excited. And this guy came on and he was asked about Wingspan, talked about it for 5 minutes, said they've taken all of the fun out of games. Where's the luck? Where's the chance? It's not. They've put
That's like my biggest complaint with Wingspan is there's too much random chance. Like, some of those birds are shit. Some of those birds are amazing.
You roll the dice and you don't even get to do anything with them. And then promptly went on to talk about the Royal Game of Earth for 45 minutes.
Wow.
I'd got a whole cup of tea that was wasted.
What is this game of
I mean, it's kind of like a...
We don't need the 45-minute version.
No, it's kind of like a roll and move game that looks a little bit like hopscotch.
Okay.
So before we get too deep into this, can I just check? Did they like hieroglyph out the rules to the game of or have like historians kind of pieced together what they reckon the rules were?
From what I know, it's a bit of both, I think.
My understanding is that it is mostly reconstructed from guessing.
Okay. So if you found like an ancient copy of chess and you didn't know the rules to chess, how likely do you think your guess on how that game played would be accurate?
I think you get there. I think you get there. Really? Years ago, we talked about doing this in the magazine. We thought about, what about if we gave a load of pieces to a designer and said, hey, what is this game? Sort of thing. Like something they've never seen before. And reverse engineer a game out of this. Make a game out of this. Off you go. Here's maybe Everdell's too easy. But here's a game. Off you go. Yeah, and I think you'd get something at the end. And maybe it would have like 50% of the right?
Yeah, maybe 50%.
You've got the pawns, so they do something, right? In chess, anyway.
Yeah.
So they've all got to go somewhere together.
And they're small, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So they're probably the fodder.
They're not very
Would you even guess
powerful,
it was
so
a
it's
war
slow.
game, though? Would you even guess it was black versus white?
I mean, what if it's missing a piece? Like, you've just been missing a key piece for 3,000 years.
My first assumption would immediately be, well, that side clearly goes first. And that's their
oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's
do you know what I mean?
That's
They get one less piece because they have an advantage in the game,
Yes.
and that balances it out.
I like that.
In chess. I mean, it probably does a little bit, but that seems a bit... Can you imagine going into the World Tournament and be like, oh no, actually, we've updated the rules. You no longer have an extra pawn, so thank you. Yeah. Wow. That would change the entire landscape of chess.
Yeah.
Be the biggest... I guess chess has never had a rule.
It's been a while since we've had a revolution in chess. We've gone down a rabbit hole
yes.
here.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the first podcasts where I have probably felt significantly outclassed in my board game knowledge. So we'll see how this plays out. And I think more than anyone, Chris is able to literally, that's not the game I would have recommended. So we'll see. Did your friend actually give you don't tell us the board game now, but have we got something to beat? Have we got like a...
You have got, so Tim's answer is quite a solid one.
Yeah.
But we were definitely talking about that mostly in the context of like making friends, I think, and having something repeatable, playable, and playable by a large number of people. So, so I guess there's like maybe a bonus point for someone who guesses what that one is.
Okay.
Not that I can offer points. Sorry, I don't want to mess things up.
Oh, you're the guest. You can do whatever you like.
I'm not sure.
The power of the Titan, like in your, it could get a very inflationary situation going on here. Like, well,
1 million points to Gryffindor.
Yeah, exactly. Bloody Dumbledore, just at it again.
It's a wild card.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess with this scenario, we're obviously in the afterlife. We're trying to make friends. That is our goal: is make as many friends as possible.
Yeah, I imagine it like being a gaming convention hall where no one's set up yet. So there's lots of open play area. People are arriving. Maybe they're just popping into existence in the sort of afterlife sort of way. Maybe there's a leaflet they're handed, and then after that, it's like off you go. And what falls at that a little bag of the stuff they were buried with, because maybe that's the system. Because we're assuming that's how you
that's
get
what
the
Pharaohs
game.
were up to.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's the game you can be buried with. We're assuming it can be of any size, I think.
Yeah.
Because
Is it a bit
within the area of your tomb? Hence why the pyramids were so enormous. The Pharaoh turns up with his 500 slaves and his chariot and all the rest of it. He's off doing that, having races with the other pharaohs, I guess.
I can kind of imagine that as soon as you die, you pop in, but you don't have anything on you because you haven't been buried yet. And there's a situation where you're kind of in the airport.
You've got like
again.
a week or two before your luggage turns up.
Exactly. Well, I don't know what they're doing. Come on, guys. Like, honestly, they better pack my good underwear as well.
I love this. That's incredible. Imagine having to go back and haunt your family into putting the right stuff in. You're going back and you're trying to get them, haunt them into putting, Wingspan in or whatever it is you want to.
So they're packing your best suit to take to the Undertaker, and you're knocking Wingspan off the shelf to try and make it fall into the box.
Yeah. Or
betrayal that house on the hill. Shit, this thing is haunted. Oh my god, you'd have to get like Exorcist in at that. Oh my god, this is. I like this idea. So the objective for you, are we recommending a game for you, or essentially what we would like?
Well, I'm happy to be recommended too for that purpose. Okay. But I think it would be personal to everyone in the end, wouldn't it? So,
but I mean, you're making the choice here. So
I guess on the points level, we have to do it that way, don't we?
Yeah.
So that's fine.
What kind of games are your like go-tos?
So I'm just like extremely. This is why it's quite tricky, because I'm extremely motivated by novelty.
Okay.
In all forms, and that means if it's like
you are not alone.
That's not good for playing a game for eternity.
I know exactly. That's why it's so tricky. It's like what can stand up to that. And one of the reasons I thought I'd ask, because maybe you might have an answer that does do that. If there's a game that does something very normal in games that then turns part of it on its head, I'm like, oh, brilliant, we're away. So yeah. That's kind of thing I'm drawn to.
Have you got any kind of like themes or settings or like art styles that really appeal to you?
Open to anything, really. I do generally have a thing that I have to kind of let go generally in board games, which is the art is generally not very good on most board games, and so you just have to let it go. And then occasionally, when a good game, a game with good art, turns up with something that's truly like embodies its theme and does something interesting, then at that point you're reminded. So it'd be cool if it was one of those, but I don't think it matters too much. So in terms of theme though, anything's fine. Really, probably not Cards Against Humanity though.
No. Yeah, well, that's a game that gets like half as good every time you play it.
That's right.
That's the exact opposite of a game I'd want to play for eternity. Yeah. 3 or 4 games in, I'm like, this is not worth it.
Yes.
I remember playing the first time, being like, oh, this is an interesting. Oh, it's very saucy. Oh, whoa, the Hitler card's just been played. Oh, what's going on? And then your dad's playing something that you're just like, well, now I'm going to have to explain what B is, and then it becomes really awful, right? But no, I can imagine it's not a game that I've picked up recently.
The best time I ever had with it was if you play Codenames but use Cards Against Humanity cards instead of the actual clues. That can be quite good.
That's a bit more of a game then at that point.
Yeah, you essentially just take anything from just remove all of the Cards Against Humanity from Cards Against Humanity and put it somewhere else into a real game for real boys. Real people.
I think the style of game is quite interesting. I think it was one of the at least mainstream. So you've now got stuff like Fun Employed, which is pretty cool.
Opened up a whole genre of people judging like your attempts. Like what's the other one? Like Snake Oil and Unicorn Battle, Ultimate Unicorn, is that what that one's called?
And there's also there's a Yogscast game as well.
Oh, well, I didn't like to say, but Banana Katana, one of the best ones of those judging your friends' made up nonsense games.
I've actually played a game of it like recently, and I really really enjoyed it. So go check that out.
Check it out on the store.yogscast.com, maybe. That's probably a link.
Probably. It'll be inserted here. But no, I really enjoy those games. Well, I mean, for those sort of things, you get around. You can get someone in. You know, they've just popped into existence, and you can you bring them in on the next round. Is that something that's important to you, or are you I want four people for at least 4 hours?
I'm thinking that because of the amount of time that's available, and I think this is one of the traps, which is like, oh, that game I've wanted to play. I've never done a War of the Ring second edition tournament. You know, you might have that in your head and like, this would be the time.
Yeah, you know, best of 3 per round. But maybe,
maybe that's quite. But I think that's a trap as well. So, but I think a game that doesn't rely on a consistent play group would maybe be good, or a game that could at least support adding in other players would be my preference.
That's a tough one, because I usually find that the lighter and more accessible games are less replayable.
That's right, yeah.
And then the games that are quite deep and complicated, they're the ones I want repeated plays on. But then that's harder to get a big group of people in, and much less accessible.
But I suppose what I'm saying is that it should be heavy enough to support that, and then you'd want to be able to add people to it. So you don't want a legacy game, for example. You don't want a game. We definitely don't want a destructive legacy game.
Oh my god! We played 8 games choice. And now we're done.
But something where there's a chance of adding in other players, and you could do that sort of thing if you wanted. That'd be fun. But I mean, we're not in a rush, are we?
No.
We don't know how long we're here. We're probably for a long time.
Would it get a bit awkward though if you're there so long playing your War of the Ring 3 rounds a piece in your tournament, and then suddenly like your partner turns up and you're just like, hi there, sorry, I'm just really in the middle of something here. Give me a few years.
42 years, we're taking the next breaks.
Schedule it.
I like this is when it gets like metaphysical or sci-fi, doesn't it, almost? It's like that bit in oh my god, I've forgotten the name of the film now. The gravity is very, very, very high.
Oh yeah, Interstellar.
And then
the time dilation.
Yeah, the time dilation, which that's a quite affecting good part of the film actually. But it's like that, isn't it? Because you suddenly have this other person turning up and snapping in, and you'd be like, no, I've gone native. I now only think about things in hundreds of year cycles now. Because I'm trapped in this place. As you will be soon, you'll get it.
Yeah, in a couple of decades, you'll be on the same level as me. Don't worry.
Maybe one of the keys to this is not how the game plays, but drawing from your chess situation, a scenario, and the fact that you like novelty. Maybe we just get the game that has the most pieces in, and then you can make up your own games. You're like, hey, look, I've got essentially like a Gloomhaven sized box, which is like 10 kilograms of board games, and you're just like, cool, I can now make up my own game.
That is a real can of worms. Like I've worked with online groups who have like taken games after they've been discontinued and sort of fan communities kept them alive. And there's always a big movement. Half of the people want to keep it exactly the same, and the other half want to evolve it and grow it. And trying to get even a small committee of people to agree on what's an appropriate rules change is, oh my god, nigh on impossible.
Yeah. I guess if you don't have the power of the publisher hammer, then you're like, what power do you have? You've only got what was granted to you, or from the titan of board games. I mean, I'm sure that would be a heavy vote one way or the other.
Well, maybe you could have whoever wins gets to pick. Like you play a tournament to determine who is right to change the rules.
This rule is broken, and I will show you why. Therefore, we need to change it.
Who'll prove it through might?
That does make sense.
I quite like that, actually.
Yeah?
But these are all ways to improve our game. We don't know what the game is yet, do we?
Yeah, that's true.
No.
I mean, I'm slightly like the idea of going and having one game. I always hoped that when you got to the end, all of the games that are out of print would be there waiting for you. Like they'd gone to their own
Some kind of
afterlife.
nerdvana.
No, but like they'd had their own afterlife. Their time on this planet has gone, and they've gone somewhere else.
Like
and hopefully that's where I'm going.
Cardboard Valhalla.
But like when
basically.
something gets reprinted, you just see it like grow the angel wings and like float off the shelf kind of thing. That would be excellent.
So second editions would the first edition float away? Would the first edition stay?
Like the first edition would stay.
Yeah,
I think.
I think that's how it should work.
Yeah,
you to-
rules changes. And,
Probably got the space for it in
Yeah.
this unlimited space, I assume, as well.
But now you'll come to hate like every time a game's like reinvented or brought back, because it'll be taken away from you in the afterlife and brought back to Earth. And you'd be like, the humans!
They've done it again!
Mid playing.
Mid-play, you'd be in the middle of like an 80,000 year tournament, and now the game doesn't exist, and you don't know who's won.
But there'd be so many new games. It'd be fine. What do you reckon the ratio is of like games going out of print to games coming into print? Like how many games get printed?
That's a pretty
versus how many?
one-sided ratio.
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, at the minute, yeah.
Wow, if only we had someone who worked in the tabletop
I don't
gaming
know,
magazine.
actually. I don't know, actually. That's quite interesting because it is that thing of there's so many games that will, there's games in this magazine that we've reviewed that have come out this month, right? That are still warm, do you know what I mean? But that is their final print run.
Yeah.
They will be out of print once they disappear, because out of print really just means no one's currently got any on the shelves. That's really what out of print means.
Yeah.
Or there's obviously the situation of strange rights situations and stuff. But so yeah, you never really know. So almost all games are kind of hurtling towards out of printness, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're sort of kept on life support occasionally when like they hit the hotness and everyone's like, oh yeah, that game, or a new expansion comes out, and it sort of gets a little, okay, you got to get another couple of months before we cut it.
I think Kickstarter does, and as much as a lot of people do rag on Kickstarter, many people in the industry tell me, it does a couple of things, which is it's kind of created the industry as it is now in some way, but also you've got if you're a publisher and you're putting out your new game, and you're also doing a print run of your old game, that's a nice way of keeping that little supply bump available there. That's what I think anyway. So
I get very passionate about Kickstarter because
you love it.
Board game cafes, like we ran a Kickstarter to start, which is probably not the conventional use for a Kickstarter. Like we'll be honest about that. However, like for the board gaming industry, like there is so many benefits when you start talking about the fact that you have to do batch printing and you have to know what the demand is and all the rest of it. And so from a small individual who's like, I've got this cool idea, and like that is 100% what Kickstarter's for.
Well, exactly. They can't afford to just speculatively throw £100,000 at a project hoping it will sell. They need to know how many they're going to order.
I mean, even when we're talking like Frank West, like that's how, like he's a huge publisher now. Because, well, I guess everything. He's a new publisher now because he found a way of like getting people involved in his projects, and he's able to kind of move that forwards, and he's done bigger, better things that he probably wouldn't have got that opportunity if he'd just gone to, Asmodee or another like manufacturer.
I
think, hey,
I think it's allowed more ambition as well.
Absolutely.
You can try more ambitious things, knowing that there's going to be an audience for them.
Well, yeah, removes the risk, which for individuals is great, but for massive corporations to, when Asmodee's going, let's just see how many pre-orders we can get on our new thing on Kickstarter. That's sort of less cool, but that's the way it is, I guess.
But maybe it's fine as well, for that stuff, because it generates, at least they're not putting the money into things that aren't wanted in some way.
That's true. That's wastage.
I know there's a funny sort of where the snake eating itself with supply and demand and that kind of thing. Do people want things they don't know exist? But I like Kickstarter for on the indie level. We had a mistimed zine quest this last month, I think, and so that's people making 16-page zines, RPG zines. And it's like people doing it who've never done it before. And that's really, really good. It's usually every February. Everyone should check that out. But you get so many like good ideas. And if you're one of those people like me who you buy an RPG based on the one-line pitch of you're a
Jason Statham's Great Vacation.
Yeah, actually, that's one of my favorites. That's how I know who Grant Howard is.
Nice.
That's my first introduction to who he is. But like your Viking Death Squad, right? Okay, you know if you want to play that game already. I've told you everything you need to know about the game. Then you see it in print, and it's got gold, not gold. It's got green foil on the front in heavy metal font, right?
Yeah, right.
You're like, I know whether I want to play that or not already, and that's it. So for someone who likes getting like, here's the one good idea, off you go. Inquest's really good for that, and I think that's what Kickstarter does do well. I mean, obviously, it's business practices and etc. are not very good, but
that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, sorry, we shouldn't, should we?
This is a topic that I love talking about, because I sometimes see it as a business perspective. So I'm like, even at the large corporate levels, there are definitely issues with utilizing it and the whole eco structure of board games and everything else that's involved. But like, fundamentally, if you know how many you need to produce, then that's great, right? That just helps. So there may be another solution, but Kickstarter as a whole has been great for the industry, and I think that largely we can.
Well, that's it. Even though it has problems, I think it's a net benefit overall, right? Like, board game industry is in a better position now than it was before.
Absolutely,
and you're now seeing people move to kind of GameFound and Back a Kit as well to kind of do things. So there are the alternatives.
I feel definitely like it's become the Dyson of like these it's like you say it's Kickstarter, even if it's not going to be Indiegogo or very other one, it's like, oh, it's on a Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's like Googling something, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Just Google it. Yeah, no, exactly. Cool. So I think last time we you had this conversation, not this whole conversation, but you said you kind of want something that people can join in, but you prefer something with a bit of strategy. Yeah. So we had a really middle of the road answer where it was just literally like, we can go either way. It could be 4 people, or it could be up to 20 people. Is that how you'd like to leave it, or would you like to be a little bit more?
Okay. So I should tell you what I actually like, shouldn't I? That'd probably help. Yeah. So I like heavier things that are maybe sometimes have a small war game element to them, even if it's not really a war game, and it just has. I've grown a soft spot for those, those historical games where you just roll dice, and if you roll 6s, you kill each other. When you take an area control, I love that. I love the limited hand of cards where maybe you've got the same kinds of cards in your hands as your opponents, so you've got that symmetrical choice about how you play things out. I love deck building. I love all these sort of like slightly crunchy things where there's like some kind of like inherent push and pull with the other person as well. So I do like a bit of conflict. Yeah. And that's good. But then I do also love just making a little engine in front of me and making it go really good. So
that's tricky, because often most war games are not super accessible, or they're just one-on-one. Like, it crosses a lot of them off this list.
I have something that's popped into my head. Now, I don't want to mention it because it seems perfect for the scenario.
Okay. Before you do, I saw something brilliant. While we're talking about death and war games, I saw something fantastic the other day, which was a rule from a war game from like the 70s. And this guy designed a full war game about God knows what scenario, recreating a historical scenario. But his great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather was in that battle.
Great.
And the
so did he put a rule in for him?
The rule was, if you killed this guy, immediately stop playing the game, because the game designer will have ceased to exist.
That's right. See, I like this. Yeah.
And like, I kind of love that idea.
See, that's the level of novelty that's really got me, honed in on it.
That breaks armor.
I mean, it is
wandering through, being like, "Come at me, bro."
I mean, it is a little campaign for North Africa, but still.
But the mechanical part of my brain immediately just goes, okay, so now I know that if I'm behind and I feel like I can't possibly win, I Hail Mary pass for the draw and just assassinate this guy Back to the Future style to reset the timeline.
Let's get back on track, guys. I still think so. We
need more, don't we?
Yeah.
So maybe don't worry about that player count thing. Don't worry about it too much.
And anything you really don't like about board games? Any turn-offs?
That's really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not novelty.
Boring games.
The thing is, no, I quite like boring games as well. That's sort of what we like. Anything that's doing something like really, really, really competently, and you're just like, this is a really great worker placement game. and it really works. It does nothing new. Still, also like that's kind of a novelty in itself because like I could because I could get it up and running in a nice fashion. Anything I don't like to have to read about the backstory of an elf that I don't care about.
I feel attacked.
Any sort of lore dump. I don't really need that. I want that to create our own stories. Really, I think that's quite important. I like a narrative sense of things, and I think I like it when games have. You can at the end of them, you have a discussion about what you would have done differently, or that was really cool that happened, or this is the card I had in my hand and you were absolutely done for if we'd had another turn, or whatever. Like those sort of things I like. So the absence of all of that sort of stuff kind of is a little bit of a turn off. I do struggle with party games sometimes because I get a little bit bored of them quite quickly.
The novelty wears off.
That's right.
It always does.
Eventually. Or not. See, there's a few games where I feel like they've still got that novelty for me, and they're doing a really good job of it. The only other thing I'd say is I guess we're not choosing RPGs because that'd be too easy.
We tend to stick to board games in general.
Okay. I thought you did, but I just wanted to.
But you're right that in this scenario, like an RPG would be like, well, here you go. We don't have to give you. We can give you a system, and then that's for eternity.
Here's the 40 books for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. You've also got something to read and defend yourself with. So
we can't wait to hear about the exploits of your level 985,000 cleric in several centuries' time.
Imagine completing a campaign.
I can't imagine getting past the fourth meetup, to be honest. It's so hard to find a regular group.
I don't know if an RPG would be just too emotional, though. Like, presumably everyone is dead and has gone through some stuff.
Yeah.
It might be a good way of working out that stuff, right?
Like, just
it can be
afterlife
quite
therapy.
Yeah. There's just death there being like, oh, he's got the DM screen.
Oh my god, death as the DM would be so good. Yeah.
We know how this is going to end before we even sat down. Right, okay.
Are we going to run into problems with, like, obviously everyone's died potentially hundreds of years apart, having any kind of like cultural common ground? Like, are people going to know, like, for example, with war games, a lot of people aren't going to know what World War II is.
Interesting.
Is that worth keeping in mind? Or fuck it, we'll lore dump them at the start.
Well, I think you could probably, if he was historically based, you can just say, well, can you remember the last time two people had a fight? It was like that.
It's bigger.
I mean, wars, we've done that a while.
That's true, that's fairly universal.
We're pretty good at starting wars, apparently.
I do like this idea of something universalizing, though, in some way. I think that's like, if you pick this game and it's somehow the universalizing game for all peoples, you've done something amazing.
You are the Titan of gaming.
Are we assuming at this point that everybody... there's like a universal language that we all speak?
I guess so. I think we've been Babelfished or whatever, I think
the language has no use in after death, right?
I think
that's a very corporeal issue.
We've
evolved beyond,
as is like sleep and things like that, I assume, which is why we'll have so much time to play board games.
This is why
if we don't get telepathy in death, I'm not going. It's not worth it.
Telepathy.
I want no language at all, just head to head.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you've still got like the masking of thoughts, so you can have a good board game.
Yeah.
Oh god, that would ruin a lot of strategy games.
Really
I hadn't thought of that. Okay. maybe telepathy is a different luxury for elsewhere. Okay, sure.
So I'm going to think really hard about doing the opposite move. Oh no, I thought about that. There he goes.
And all of a sudden, there's a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
I suppose the other thing is, do we want to include other aspects of the hobby?
In what sorts of situations?
I'm just thinking, like, what if you did actually want to recommend a war game, are you now sort of suggesting that you're being buried with a complete set of speed paints by Army Painter or whatever it is?
Right.
That would be a very expensive burial.
Rivaling the pharaohs of old. Especially if you want variation, gotta be buried with 20,000
You wouldn't be able to be
points.
cremated either.
Can you imagine that? Just being like, how many? We're gonna have to get a bigger coffin. We've got at least 3 more legions of Space Marines to get in here.
Oh god. I mean, are they? Presumably they're not still lead figurines because you couldn't cremate those either.
Oh,
wow. That was my. I can't believe I was spending my youth around that much lead.
Yeah.
Was it not pewter?
It was like a lead computer mix until like the 90s when the
Right.
EU
Bandit.
banned it. Yeah, and they had to replace it with a tin alloy.
Yeah, that's why they said that's when they say like white metal on it, and that's because I guess it was better to paint as well, maybe.
It was less. It was more rigid. Like the old tin and the old lead pewter was like really soft and bendy.
Yeah.
Right.
And you didn't get very crisp edges. So it was definitely an improvement switching to tin.
Nice.
There we go.
Sorry,
Big miniature nerd chat.
The best thing that I found about moving from metal to plastic was it just didn't chip as much.
Yeah. Metal definitely chipped more.
Yeah.
Couldn't handle them so much.
And obviously, we now got Kickstarters which are just built on miniatures, which is a whole other wormhole we could go down. Okay, so we've got a situation where you're in the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
You'd like something that's maybe slightly novel, but I mean, realistically, after the first 100 years, it's probably not going to be so novel. But we're going to be playing this game. You prefer more strategy than random luck.
Yep.
You're key if it has an RPG element, that would be great. But we're still heading
Or if you could
towards-
generate some sort of story out of it, that'd be great.
Okay, but we're not legacy. We can't just burn this thing after 12 plays. It's got to be that wouldn't be long enough for us. How are we choosing? So I guess the situation is we go down one route. You're getting loads of people in. You're trying to make lots of friends, which sounds very extroverted for me. Or you're going down the other route when you're like, "Hey, you look like a nerd. Would you like to come and play with me?" And then we're gonna play. The four of us are gonna play these games for like hundreds of years, and then maybe you'll like them, maybe you won't.
Well, I think you've got time, kind of like to very slowly accumulate a lot of friends.
Right.
So I feel that's how my life has gone, is like very slowly accumulating friends. I'm not massively extroverted, but I do like meeting new people. I think it's quite nice. But a small group of people is very good because then everyone can have some attention, basically.
I guess the board game can filter out, the people who blend in the group better, right? Like if people aren't into the game and don't blend and don't get on well with the group, and you don't instantly gel, they're not going to want to hang around, and they're off, and then someone else comes in. And over time, you get your perfect nerd group together.
How do you awkwardly say? You're like, I'm sorry, I'm really tired. I've got to go lie down. You're like, Dave, we don't get tired here. You're in the afterlife, buddy.
I mean, I'd feel remiss if we didn't ask this. Is there anyone dead that you'd like to play a board game with?
Oh, good question.
Yeah, so I tried to sort of dodge this at the start, but it would. My grandparents would be lovely to play games with. It's very sad, isn't it? And my father, he died when I was quite young, so it'd be nice to see how he got on with Spirit Island. Probably badly. that'd be quite. I can imagine. I thought about this yesterday. In preparation for that, I thought, what would he actually want to play? And it'd probably just be chess. We play a lot of chess, but that's not the answer. Please don't just give me that answer. Maybe. Oh, sorry.
Blast.
Yeah, we're all
Scuffle
tearing
again.
up over here, and you're like, yeah.
So that's that would be nice. But that's why I imagine it would take a little while to find the people you really want to play with.
Yeah.
And you probably wouldn't even need to play a board game with them, would you? So,
You just end up spending the first 100 years just chatting. Again.
That's it. Yeah.
So if there's anything like my family, then I normally I have 24 hours with them, and I have so much to say, and then after that, I'm like, hi again.
Another cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly. Can I make you something? Cool, excellent. Okay, so we've got smaller group favorably because we've got all the time we want to find our friends, as it were. The thing is, I guess if you're taking literally like years to play these games, you're just going to have an influx of more people, or then you're going to be like, oh, they don't get this. It's going to be really interesting to work out whether or not there's an education. That
I guess there's like the thing of your school cohort almost in this, isn't there? There'll be a group of people with 100 years of same knowledge that you have of the prior world, and you might not even be interested in learning about the world afterwards beyond maybe your grandkids turning up or something.
Once they've got flying cars,
really...
I'm done. I'm checking out. Just keep me posted until the flying cars are invented, and then I'm done.
Oh, these new generations coming into the afterlife. What are they like?
So we obviously said we've got loads of time, and then we were talking about unfinished business at the beginning. It's like when you complete this game, do we feel like that's you move on from there, or are you just literally like, no, I've got way more unfinished business to deal with here?
In terms of the game itself,
in terms of like
afterlife.
Is there a completionist situation on that? Or we seem to have taken the expectation that everyone goes into this limbo and then we're all good here. But is there ever a situation people move to the next room?
We don't know.
Okay.
I think that has to be the answer. We don't know. This is maybe a filtering system.
Okay.
Where you decide afterwards.
Yeah, you just go like, which chute would you like to go down, the green one or the one that's really wiggly?
Yeah, exactly. So maybe a series of slides.
Yeah.
Just tubes all the way down.
Whenever you're done with your campaign, here you go.
I love that Morpheus was like, you get a choice of pills. You're like, water slides.
I mean, if we're gonna have anything, then water slides are pretty high up on my list. I'm not gonna lie. I don't do them enough.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it, but Morpheus can suck it. But, like, that's great.
Honestly, Morpheus, it was very uninventive. You could have done better, thanks.
He just rolls back one of the walls, and it's Centre Parks.
Would you like the blue slide or the red slide? This is a way better metaphor. Excellent. So I feel like we're getting closer in on the recommendations.
Yep.
Is there any other questions we had?
No, I think I've got one lined up. I've got all the. I think any more questions will only ruin my suggestion.
It always gets to that point. Yeah.
Excellent. All right then. So we're on to board game recommendation time. Who would like to go first?
I mean, I'm happy to kick us off.
All right,
go.
I'm the strong titan of board gaming.
I'm kind of cheating here a little.
Okay,
but I'm leaning on the novelty factor.
Okay.
So this is a game by Friedman Fries from I think 2015, but it's called 504.
Okay.
And the idea was there were 9 different mechanisms within the box that you could mix and match to make 504 different games.
Wow.
So you would be able to kind of mix and match them, very low on the elf backgrounds, so that we've got that covered.
Nice. Tick.
But you could, the idea of like having 504 different games that you could kind of discover again, because I guess with both of our jobs, you get, we're seeing new games all the time, and I think this game would really be able to kind of recreate that feeling of seeing something exciting or kind of not like, and also having the time for not letting the novelty wear off, because you'd come back to a game 503 games later, presumably. By
the time you finish the last game, you've forgotten the first game and you can go around again.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's got a little bit of like the, when you see like in like the supermarkets, like 9 games in one box, and there's kind of like a chessboard that you're playing like 8 different games on badly.
So to confirm, the 504, it's literally different games for each. It's not just different setups or anything. It's like potentially different mechanics in it.
So there's 9 different types of mechanic.
Right.
So you've got some like worker placement, you've got some deck building, you've got like some like engine building and kind of tile laying and that kind of thing. And what it does is it mixes and matches those, and it does like assign a different story to each one. There's some where you've got to get a boat from one side to the other.
How
some
big
of them
is this rule book?
I mean, it's got a kind of it's a ring binder of like, like you get in loads of games now where you kind of got a like dry wipe ring binder, or something like Sleeping Gods where you've got like the whole story book on a ring.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of vibe.
Okay.
But because you basically need to explain the mechanisms in detail at the beginning, and then you can kind of go, right, well, this one uses this bit and this bit, and this is the goal. Get this from here to here, or take over this amount of area. So it does have that kind of, there's some area control in there, so it satisfies your wargaming kind of thing.
Yeah.
But also, you've got hundreds of people coming through presumably every day, so there's something for everyone. So if you have a group of people that aren't as intense about games, there's presumably something for them. I'm going to be honest, I've not played all 504 of these.
That is not the dedication we expect of a guru.
You can't recommend a game you haven't played.
Yeah.
What the hell is this?
But there's enough for everyone in there, I think. And I think it's difficult because I'm recommending this from the novelty factor and the kind of versatility factor, I think probably there are a lot of better games in the world. But in this scenario, I think this set of games kind of really works.
So I've never heard of this game, and that's quite exciting. But also just this idea that beyond playing the games as well, you'd also almost immediately develop a game culture where your group of people who play 504, you start ranking the games, you start having separate tiers of games. Maybe
There's a whole meta game involved around.
I mean,
maybe there's connecting tissue between the games that you could invent, you know. So if you take your resources from one game into another game, for example, there's loads of stuff you could do. I really like this.
So like I've almost done exactly what you said during the episode, which is, you know, just give you a load of pieces.
That's it.
Yeah, pretty much. Empty a bag of board game bits on the table.
But like, I think it's nice to have kind of frameworks to hang stuff off, and I think it would have enough to kind of interest.
I feel like by the end of you playing this, it would be a really good game. Like, it sounds like the premise sounds really interesting, but if you had to like home rule a little bit of it, you've got enough time to play test it to your heart's content, so that by the end of it, you're just like, this is the best game in the world.
It's a really weird one because we got it for the cafe in the opening kind of days of the cafe, and we had it, but it was such a weird one that we never had the time to learn any of the games to teach. It was kind of a curiosity.
Because where do you
was
even
just
start
there.
learning that?
Exactly, and you know, it's not one that we can just get out and show people quickly. It's not. It wasn't. The enthusiasm wasn't translatable, but the fact that it exists is a wonderful thing, I think.
I like the idea that you can cultivate a game around what people's likes and dislikes. I mean, obviously, some people don't know what they like, and that's totally fine. And I guess you can manipulate the game to be like, hey, let's try this mechanic. You don't know what it is. Like, let's introduce you to this kind of board game theory. Or you can literally be like, I hate deck building. Deck building is not for me. Take that out. That sounds good. I really like that idea.
Yeah. I guess actually, after a while, if you've got a couple of those mechanics you don't like, it quickly becomes like 68 games. Once you've taken a couple out. But that's great. Wow, what a high bar to set. Holy moly.
Yeah. It's real good.
Sorry, I should have come through at the end of that one, but
That's all right. I've got a very strong option. So, I'm going to blow everything out of the water. Don't you worry. Would you like to say anything else? Or
I think I rest my case, sir.
wow! All right, nice one, Ben. Now you have to follow that.
That's fine. It's fine because I'm going to recommend a game called 505.
There's a sequel.
I'm publishing it myself later this year. It just adds an extra dice to your game. No, in all seriousness, I'm going to a bit more laser focused. Hopefully, in a game that, by being more focused, will be more satisfying in its more limited scope. And it's going to tick off quite a few of the boxes that you said you liked. Obviously, it can't tick all the boxes. Because there's a lot of categories to cover here, but this game is an obscure one that I'd be surprised if many people have heard of, called Mythotopia, which is the second game from, I forget the designer's name now, but they made a game called A Few Acres of Snow.
Oh, yes.
So,
okay.
This is their follow-up, which A Few Acres of Snow is a very similar game mechanically, but it takes place during the Canadian-American...
That's right.
Colonial,
the French it's the
colonial
French and the
thing?
British, I think, isn't fighting.
That's it. Yeah, French and British
but on the
fighting
Canadian-
over Canada,
Yeah.
over the Canadian border.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't Canada at the time, obviously, but it's a very historical scenario with certain cities being worth certain points, that kind of thing. So Mythotopia takes the mechanics, refines them, and puts it in a more sort of open, generic fantasy sandbox setting.
Is there an elf backstory?
You can make all your own elf backstories. There's very little baked-in backstories because one of the great things about this game is how varied it can be each time. So it's 2 to 4 players. You have the map, But the victory conditions, there's a deck of victory cards, and you deal out 3 of them for each game. So the potential combinations of what you're trying to do each game is different every time. Sometimes there's dragons on the map that you get points for slaying. Sometimes there's it's important to control the seas and have boat armies. That's worth more points. Other games, you might be trying to conquer certain areas of land rather than others. We might be trying to build the longest roads. You might be who has the most castles. Whatever it is, but it's different every time. You get points for conquering territory as always, but those primary victory points are from these scenarios. There's also a global market that you can buy cards to go into your deck. Maybe you've got like a quarry that generates you more stone. You could have horse archers in your army. That's a card that goes into your deck. But that market, again, you're only using about a third of the cards. And so the combinations of what items are available and what items aren't available, different every game. So the general mechanics are every time you conquer a territory, you get a resource card. So some territories generate food, some generate building materials, some will generate money. So you conquer the territories you think you need to. I don't have enough food for my army, so I'm going to go conquer this territory that makes food. While also trying to build infrastructure into your empire, raise troops, build ships, buy new cards to go into your deck. You've got a lot of plate spinning, and you've got to prioritize what's more important for you. It's not just about swarming the map with people. The other really interesting thing about this game is that there's no dice rolling or random element in terms of the combat. What happens is you play your cards to raise troops and to feed them, and then you invade. And your opponent then gets a chance to react and raise their own troops. And the way the combat ends is someone has to spend an action to end a war, but they can only end the war when they have the most troops there. So it's this sort of escalating arms race of like, okay, well, I'm going to put 2 more troops into that war. And the other person goes, well, I can't end the war now because I'm behind. So I'm going to put another 2 troops in. And it essentially keeps going until one person backs down or someone just, I just can't keep putting troops in. I have to do something else with my turn. And eventually, both players are grinding themselves down while the other players are investing in their economy. And so at some point you have to cut your losses and go, it's going to cost me too much to defend this. I'm going to get too far behind. So I really like that as a mechanic rather than, I rolled a 6. I've conquered your territory. This is much more of a, who's going to blink first in this war? Who's going to take the economic hit the hardest before you give up? And obviously you can build castles and roads that help defend your empires, so you don't have to invest quite as much in that. It's a great little game. It takes between 1 and 2 hours once you've played it.
So you said it does between 2 to 4 players.
Yes.
But with that mechanic, it sounds like at least 3 players is needed, so that there's that time limit going on.
I think in 2-player, the war is different because obviously you're not worried about other players getting ahead of you, but instead you can launch counteroffensives into other territories because you can only end 1 war per turn. So if I feel like I'm struggling to keep up with your main invasion, I can maybe nip around the side, and then if you choose to finish the war in the main area, you're giving up ground on the other side because you have to end a war with your first action.
It's like you've done this before.
I've played it a few times. I like it because it's one of the few games that is just a pure deck builder but with map control. Because usually deck builders are much more abstract than that, and having troops on the ground and resources to manage but entirely controlled by your deck building design. I've never played anything else quite like it. It's pretty good.
Cool.
That sounds great. Yeah. I thought you did really well, but that's really good as well.
Well, it comes to me. Final recommendation then. Did you have any questions on that one?
No, I think I get that.
Yeah, it sounds cool. It sounds like the kind of game that we'll go and check out like immediately after the podcast.
That's right.
504, great for this scenario. This is something I might actually play. Talking about things that we won't be playing though, is probably my recommendation. Now, Dickie did mention it earlier in the podcast, and I couldn't think of a better use of the Limbo situation, the time involved, than genuinely playing a game called Campaign for North Africa. It is described as pretty much the longest board game you can ever play, and it is on the wiki is 1,500 hours plus.
Oh my god,
it's quite a lot. But the idea that it's so strategic, it's just this fundamental war game that can be between, I think it's like 2 to 10 players. So if you've established a few friends that you're willing to spend decades with, then this seems like a really great way of tickling that itch in a fashion that you would be able to like. You would actually. Someone would finally be able to complete a full game of this game. And not only that, but it tickles into your need to review the game as well. You could be the first person to ever actually do a decent review, having played several games of this. It would be perfect. So I don't know how you'd manage to pass it through the limbo back into the before life, the life, not the afterlife. Anyway,
I have to send messages to myself through a bookshelf potentially to tell me what I think of Campaign for North Africa from the afterlife.
Yes. So it's
I love the idea that you're asking this bookcase for the infinite knowledge from beyond time, and what it gives you back is the comprehensive Campaign for North Africa review. It's like
in no less than 48 pages.
Thanks, I guess.
Oh no, you'd have time to look up all the dumb rules there are.
You would be able to get the rules correct.
Sorry. Just to clarify, this is a game where the Italians have to carry more water because of all the pasta that they'll cook.
Great. Okay, so hold on. You've made it sound a lot better already.
Keep talking, Dickie. Keep talking.
I mean, there's your novelty. That's for me, that would wear off pretty quickly.
So from what I've heard, I've never even really looked at the game, but I've heard it's basically a logistical nightmare. Like the game is all about, although it is essentially a conflict war game, the only way you can play the war game is to make sure you've got enough ammunition and water and supply routes and trucks and all this stuff. Because if that doesn't work, no one's going anywhere or fighting any wars.
So you're saying it's a spreadsheet simulator?
Yeah.
That sounds pretty fucking great to me.
The stuff that when you're playing stuff like Hearts of Iron or like any of these like grand map games, the stuff that the computer does for you. That's what this game is about.
Easy mode.
Yeah.
This is the real nitty gritty. You want to feel like you were there. This is the game you need to be playing. Like it takes that strategy and really narrows it down, makes it that coarse, granular nature that, frankly, we've all been wanting from our board games.
That's right.
It's a lot of novelty as well. Like, how much novelty? Yeah. How many times have you played a board game where it's like, oh, because apparently you really, really like pasta, you're going to end up playing, you need more water. This is the sort of thing you get with Campaign for North Africa. So, frankly, there's going to be a lot of mechanics you'll have never played before.
That's right.
I love, like, when I play an 8-hour game as well, my brain starts going a little bit funny as well, and I kind of love that kind of feverish kind of like I played an 18XX for the first time like 4 or 5 years ago, and when we got into the 9th hour, my accent changed. I was like, what is happening? This is weird. I've just been awake for too long. Oh god. But yeah, when the Campaign for North Africa, I mean, the things that might happen.
You start creating a 1-to-1 scale version of it. You commandeer part of the.
You can use all of the people that were involved in the Campaign for North Africa.
Oh no, they're the last people I'd want involved, because as soon as you get like Montgomery down, he's like, "This is not how it happened at all."
Yes, people were there.
It's how it should have happened. I'm sorry.
Well, I did this tactic in real life, and that's how I won the Battle of Gaza. So it should have worked in the game. Gosh,
I mean, if there's anything that'll ruin a game for me, it's a PTSD panic attack.
Yeah, I was literally thinking about it. I was like, that's probably the worst way of doing it. Like, hey, can you just go and relive yourself? Like, oh, that is not.
No.
Maybe let's not do that.
Yeah.
Let's not use essentially chess with real people. That's just not.
Let's not find Rommel.
No, let's go back to it's on a table. The good news is that you're in the afterlife, and table space is not going to be an issue. You want it bigger? Bam! It's bigger. So we don't have to worry about that. And that is genuinely going to be one of the best things. The amount of table eaters that you end up going, you're just like, I need a bigger table for this. Well, you don't.
So
need to
imagine
worry.
imagine taking this into the afterlife, and you've got this infinite amount of time.
Yep.
And other people have brought board games as well, because as we discussed, right? And so you wander around, you find some people with board games, you've got it under your arm, and you say, "Oh, that looks pretty good. Oh yeah, do you mind if I join that? Oh yeah, great, lovely. Play that. Maybe play this afterwards." And everyone goes, "Well, we'll have a couple more games of this first, maybe." Eternally being turned down.
Oh no! 10,000 years of people going, "Oh, maybe later."
The unfinished business continues. I couldn't even get it when we had eternity onto the table.
I think that actually might happen.
Oh my god!
You said
I would be interested. My wife would be probably a little bit pissed that I was spending so much time not with her during the time. However,
I love the idea that you've also at some point you come to the point where you're like, okay, well, maybe I would like to two-hand it to try to give it a go, work it out. So you're playing an eternal game of solo,
just to learn it yourself. Oh, that's true, because you haven't played it in life. So you're gonna have to play both sides to learn the rules to teach anyone else in afterlife. Oh my god!
So I love this answer.
Yeah, that's how I actually learned Mage Knight and stuff. I literally played. I mean, they have a solo version of it, but it's definitely one of the things where you're like, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna play a couple of rounds of it on my own, keep going. 3 hours later.
Oh, I do want to play Mage Knight. It does seem like my kind of game, but it's so hard to get the time. It's one of those 5-hour games, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a bit longer. Yeah,
I do want
it is.
It's on my list.
I've
wildly
seen
rated.
an 11-hour game of Mage Knight before.
Really?
Yeah, it went over until the next day.
Well, speaking of the 1830 that we were playing, 1830 is like a series of games which are very dry.
Yeah, I mean they're spreadsheet simulators for sure. They are.
I mean, based on that, I'm so annoyed that essentially in the second turn of that 1830, I basically lost the game.
Oh no! But it was going to take another 10 hours before that loss rippled down.
You were,
that was legitimately what had happened.
In the train game, you were the passenger. Yes, it was. I did feel bad, but I won that game. So I just feel like I need to tell everyone I won that game.
So, do you have any questions on campaign? I mean, it's the obvious choice, but let's just, for the sake of,
I mean, it's a game none of us have played. Can we answer any questions?
That's true. Can you recommend a game you haven't played?
Just Google. I mean, this is true. I mean, I never thought there would be a more perfect scenario for this.
No,
but if you're
right.
eternally going to be turning down Battle for North Africa in the afterlife, then yeah, I mean, maybe that game's got some legitimate problems going on.
And it's quite. I think it's quite a good bit, isn't it, to be the guy carrying that around? And you know, I assume it's quite a big box. Is it a big box?
I have no idea.
I've never seen it. You know.
I mean,
good question. I don't know.
It's just a myth at this point.
Maybe it doesn't exist.
Was it even made?
From what I don't know about the board, but I know there were a lot of sheets of paper.
Yeah.
So kind of actually compression wise, I think it was okay. I didn't think it was too big a box. But it was just
quite dense.
Yeah.
I feel like at some point as well, the designer would be there and they would just be like, I can't believe you're playing my game. This is great. And they're bound to help you out with the rules. It'll be pretty much a YouTube video right there and then. And they'd help you remember all of the obscure... If you actually
I don't know if I can imagine anything worse than the creator of Campaign for North Africa explaining in detail all the rules.
You'd have to you'd have to wait till Rodney Smith died and just kind of hope for the best.
Do you
hope
mind?
he knew it.
Oh, poor Rodney roped into personal explainers, rules teachers.
Yeah, even in death, he still serves.
He's trying to get into the next room. He's his ticket's been punched or whatever. He's ready to go, and everyone's like, "Come on, we've got
Give me a quick one.
Help us out."
Yeah. He's just like, oh, look over there, and runs for the blue side. Yeah. Well. Beyond then, Campaign of North Africa. Do you have any other questions? How are you feeling like you're ready for a pick?
I think it's they're really interesting answers.
Quite different.
I mean, this is obviously a joke.
Wow!
There's
Dismissed.
I would be keen if I was in the afterlife to generally playing this game because it would be something you'd be able to talk about for the rest of eternity.
I think if I had literally eternity, I would play it once.
Yeah. Right?
For sure.
Cool. So if you're in the afterlife, you can find me and Ben by the probably largest gaming table you'll have, with probably a crowd because they're all just like, "This is a weird guy." So if you want to join us, you're more than welcome.
Maybe it would do something to you though. By the end of it, maybe you'd be like, "This is what I do now." I thought it was a novelty, but now my eyes have been opened.
So I will. The first thing I thought after you said that, when you said genuinely you would like to play it, so I did think it was a joke, was that that I am on a trajectory towards that sort of thing. Right. So I keep picking up these little, the more and more games I pick up and I choose for myself to review in the magazine, they do come with a historical booklet. And so I do seem to be going that way. So
Right.
it's quite possible that, you know, if I have a long life,
Yeah.
that might become my choice.
By the end of it, when you finally retired, you're like, I've got all the time in the world.
Right.
I might dabble, and then we'll look back on this podcast, and you'll be like,
I called it.
Rich was onto something right there.
Yeah. As you do your like Sunday afternoon play by email campaign for North
exactly.
Africa over the
Yeah.
course of
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah.
We're going to do 5 hours a week for the next 10 years.
Yes. Okay. Well, obviously, this is you're not ready for my recommendation.
Yes, right.
But
I'm not mature
Before your
enough
time.
yeah,
yet. God, it's really tricky. Yeah. Shall I tell you what my answer was going to be?
Oh,
What I actually had in my head. Because it's kind of my default answer to everything now, and that would be Oath.
It was my second choice.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
haven't played it yet.
Fantastic.
No, you've not played it yet. It's really good, and that I think that recurring legacy element of the non-destructive card deck, which I really like. That's one of the things I liked about your title,
Mythotopia.
Mythotopia. Is that it has really root kind of feelings to it. That kind of because root has a not root. Oath. Sorry, has oath kind of feelings to it in that sense of like you don't know what your goal is at the start of the game. You know the range of things it could be, but you in Oath you discover them as you go. But obviously they're designed slightly differently. But so yeah, that quite Oath appeals to me quite a lot as the one.
I like it's kind of like the reverse of your elf backstory. You're kind of creating those stories as well.
Yeah.
You know, like I played a game where I attacked a drowned village, a drowned city with the card Rain Boots.
Yeah.
And I just love that. The idea that's what did it.
Yeah, that's it.
You know?
You know, and you probably already have people you've played the game with multiple times, and you obviously already have these stories that you're already sharing. Imagine that after 100 years, 1,000 years, you know, that'd be quite a lot of resets of the game at that point.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons I fell in love with Oath. Oh my word!
It's the same artist and the
know.
same designer. So yeah,
because I just had my daughter. And so this idea of a legacy game that I could play with all my friends and people that she'll probably never meet or that she'll never remember and stuff like that. And then those games affecting the game that she'll eventually play. That idea is really quite nice. You know, she could play in 22 years time, you know, sort of thing. Anyway, it's difficult, isn't it? Because I really like 504. Is it 504?
yes,
Yeah.
You're like, or is it the 505 variant? I'm not
Because do you know those Jordan Draper games, the Tokyo Gigabati or whatever it is, which is Tokyo coin operator or Tokyo coin laundry or whatever it is, and they're little boxes of like 20 little games that he's made some components for, and some of them are just like flicking things at stuff, some of that sort of thing. So I am quite drawn to that because I've had quite a lot of good times with that sort of thing.
Yeah. And like on a real note, on the 505 thing, if I could add one component, like I don't know, I've said this to my family before, and I get mocked, and I feel like this is the only place when I die.
It's stupid.
When I die, I mean, it is stupid. There's no getting around it. It's stupid. But when I die, I would like to be cremated, and I would like my ashes to be put in a sand timer.
Oh, so you can still take part in game
I
nights.
could still be. Yeah, exactly. Just put me in a game.
Would that work?
I think
you'd need additional sand.
You'd have to probably get some kind of rock tumbler that makes the ash finer, like some way of grinding it down. Maybe.
Yeah,
because I don't know how fine it would stick, though, wouldn't it? It would clog.
I don't know. Like,
there's almost certainly a way for it to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some people want to go up in fireworks, and some people want to, you know,
you want to be trapped for eternity in a box.
Like if it was me, I'm always quite generous. I'd probably be like, it's a minute sand timer, bone timer. God, it would be like,
I did think about that.
a minute 3 seconds, just so they have an extra couple of seconds.
The leeway.
How much of yourself, like, are you willing? if it's a minute sand timer, but your ashes fill a 5-minute sand timer.
Yeah, I don't think
Come
you'd,
to the cremation and everyone gets a free sand timer.
I don't think you'd need all of me. Yeah. Scatter some somewhere, put some in the next timer. You know,
I like it
I
as
could
like
do it all.
like a Pomodoro thing. So it's just like it's a 25-minute timer, and it's like, you know, your grandkids are using it just to be really productive.
I wonder if I'd produce enough ash to like have 504 different ways of being used.
I'm sure you could probably dilute it enough that you could probably
This is where my feasting begins.
Oh my days.
I'm going to blow up to that size. That's the end goal now. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's great. Mythotopia.
Is that your pick?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
Basically,
Oh my god, is this
so
the first time you
solid.
haven't won an episode you've been in?
Baby.
Oh
I
my
don't know,
god.
yeah.
It's a very proud moment.
because even that, it's the sort of thing you'd rashly do, as if I'm packing my own coffin, that is. The thing you'd rashly pack, you'd think, this would be really good, that's a really good situational thing. And then you look at the other game that you really like, and it's like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get everyone in on that. But, you know, it's like, you know, if you went to a family gathering or something, it's like packing for a funeral, I guess. That's what I'm talking about. You think, we'll take this because that will get everyone involved. Or you pick the one you actually just want to play and find the 3 people who want to play it.
A little bit like flipping a coin, and you immediately know which side you want to land on. Yeah,
yeah. I think that's it. I think that's also one that I could play with my dad or my granddad or anything like that. I think there's much more scope for long term.
But
stuff
think
there,
about
so.
the amount of family bonding that you get when playing campaign for North Africa. You've got loads of time.
You're screaming at your subordinates for messing up your supply lines. I needed that water here 3 weeks ago.
We've just been eating dry pasta.
oh man.
I mean, it sounded. I have to say, Mythotopia seemed a very interesting game.
Yeah.
You've kind of once again, you've managed to sell a game really well. It also happens to be the one that we've played between us.
Yeah,
the perfect.
yeah.
But no, that sounds really wicked. It sounds cool. I'd probably agree.
And
with that.
I'm really glad you said Oath, because I was kicking myself that I didn't say it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what Tim recommended?
Tim recommended Agricola, All Creatures Great and Small.
Oh,
Okay.
That's a terrible choice.
We didn't talk about it for 10 minutes before. and his thing, he was very much focused on like
accessibility,
having lots of games with lots of different people.
Yeah.
So that's why he went down that route.
Right.
But yeah. So
the moment you told me you liked war games, I was like, I can't do accessible
it, you have to, yes.
and satisfying war game at the same
That's
time.
it. That's it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. That's been really interesting. It may not, all of these recommendations may not be what people are about to immediately go out and pick up. Maybe Mythotopia.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know if it's in production anymore. I think it's from like 2009. So it feels
The
like
good news is all of these games will be waiting for you out of print in the afterlife.
There you go. Thank you for doing that public service announcement. That's much appreciated.
Like, just clarifying.
Can I quickly ask, what would your choices for yourself be?
Ooh.
I know we just talked about a choice for me for an hour or whatever, and I'm asking you to answer in about 5 seconds. But
I don't know.
I do know Race for the Galaxy would be mine.
a really good choice. Yeah.
You've been playing that since way before we even opened the cafe.
Way before we met, yeah. Like it. Me and Luke, one of the founders of Chance Encounters, we had like our student years, and I think for about 2.5 years, that was what we played pretty much exclusively. Yeah, we'd like stay up till like midnight playing, and then get up bleary-eyed at 11 o'clock in the morning, just play another game. It was heady days. But yeah, I think just the pure amount of creativity and strategy that game gives you. There's so many different routes to victory. It's not just efficiency. It's not just kind of sheer might. You can be really creative with it and kind of go in lots of different directions. And I think that to me is what's important in the games that I really enjoy, is kind of creative freedom, I guess.
Yeah. Do you have a go-to?
I don't know. I'm struggling to think of a good one. Spirit Island comes to mind because I've played it a lot, and I still feel like I've got a lot of replayability left to get out of it with all the escalating difficulty in it. And I do enjoy a complicated cooperative game where you can't backseat each other. So I've really Spirit Island's a contender, but I know eventually I would solve it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And so
That's the only way to
Eternity is probably too long for Spirit Island.
That's the only way to win as well, isn't it? Spirit Island. It's like you lose or you solve it, sort of thing. That's how the game feels to me, anyway. I love that game. So,
it's really good. But yeah, I can't think of anything better, even though I know that's not perfect.
And I mentioned one of my favorite games, a game that I've played. I've even recommended it as well. Is Terraforming Mars, and I know that is very divisive for people within board game community and various others. It's not super accessible if you haven't played many board games as well, but it's the game that I consistently play the most with my wife. It works well with 2 players, and I would also be able to spend eternity fixing the artwork. So that's one of the biggest issues that a lot of people have. And it might be crap, but it'll at least be consistent artwork.
I think it's a good choice. I think it also gives you that kind of creative freedom, lots of different routes to victory as well. So lots of like stuff to discover, which is I think a good choice.
I've played all the expansions, and I would be intrigued to know if I could come up with an expansion for myself, So we'll see. That wasn't in the question, but I feel like
with the time though, it's implied, isn't it?
I guess it's just one of those things where it's just I've played loads of board games. When we opened the board game cafe, Tokaido was the one that I would constantly go on about because it was a perfect sort of entry level. Up to 5 players, and it felt really good, and you'd be playing, it'd be this wonderful unique experience for people who had never played it before. But after recommending it like all the time, I was like, I don't want to play this game anymore. But like over lockdown, over a bunch of situations, like I've literally played Terraforming Mars like into probably the 40 games. And if my wife asks me if I want to play it, I'll probably be like, yeah, okay. So as much as it gets, people sometimes love it, sometimes don't. This is my PSA for Terraforming Mars. Please give your Terraforming Mars another go. It's waiting for you. It's lovely.
That's so sincere.
Wow.
With anything else, so thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for asking that question. It's really interesting. And where can people find you?
Okay, so this might go on for just a moment because we've got so much going on right now. I'm so sorry, everyone. You're going to have to listen to me for just a moment. Okay, got this magazine. It's in the shops. Go buy it or go subscribe. Right?
It is great. It's my favourite gaming magazine.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
No worries.
It's always nice to hear that.
I'm going to put you on the position here. Be like, White Dwarf.
Wow. I do like my old issues of White Dwarf to go back to them because it feels really nostalgic, but I don't think it's what it used to be. So we've got that. We've got tabletopgaming.co.uk, which is our website where you can get all sorts of cool stuff, including news and bits like that. We've got our awards going on right now, so go vote in that. You can go find out about that on tabletopgaming.co.uk. That's all public voted. So you know it's real. It's not one of those ones where a sponsor has bought it, Mm-hmm. And most importantly, we have got a live show going on in Manchester later this year, September the 17th and 18th in Manchester, and this is our Tabletop Gaming Live convention. Thousands of gamers, hundreds of stalls. I think it's maybe going to be the third biggest show, second or third biggest show. It depends what you think about aircon. Depends how big that is. And it's going to be a blast. And we have got a code for you that you can get 10% off if you want.
Perfect.
Which is podcast 10. Use that on the Eventbrite, like post button click thing.
I think there'll be a link in the description as well.
Yeah. Yes, right. And yeah, so I think that's nearly it. Oh no, Advent calendar, last one.
Oh.
We're doing our Advent calendar again this year, which is a box of 25 goodies, gaming goodies. We charge a huge amount of money for it. It's £250, but the RRP last year was nearly 600 quid.
Wow.
So like what you get inside and the people opening it is like the best part of my year is watching people opening it on the way up to Christmas and going, okay, this is really good.
And you're like, second bounty, third bounty, what's going on here?
And there's nearly no chocolate in it. Although we did have those, honey badger sweets, the dice ones.
Amazing.
Yeah, very cool. We did have those last year. I'm not sure if we're going to have them this year.
What's your highlight of last year?
So our day 25, because we ended up with 25 because we got overexcited. Because usually it's 24, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was Streets by Sinister Fish.
Wow. What's that?
So
It's a great game.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic.
the follow-up to Villagers, same sort of box, but it's like Carcassonne if someone designed it. Well, couple of years ago, really. That's kind of what it's like. It's just like all sped up, and there's this nice weird migration of people that you're trying to capture in a street, and it's about closing streets off to gain. That's when you score your points, sort of thing.
Right.
And if whoever owns the things in the streets scores for the various values on the tiles. But it's so that was like one of our big games. Our first year we had Everdell. That was our big game.
Wow.
So like we're talking like serious stuff. So far. I think we've got something like 7 or 8 full games in there, but I've not finished getting everyone in, so it might end up being just wall-to-wall games. So
Sounds exciting.
Treat yourself.
So
25 special Christmas gifts.
Lovely.
yeah, it's really good. I mean, I just like seeing the social media posts afterwards, and obviously we have to wrap like thousands of these things, and there's only a limited number, so there's only 150 of them available. So go pre-order now. I think you get money off for pre-ordering now. Get money off for being a subscriber as well. So
Yes.
So there you go. So there's all of that. But yes, come to our show in Manchester, subscribe to the magazine, and all that other stuff, tabletopgaming.co.uk. I think that's enough.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to chew on. You've got all the things you can do between now and next week's podcast. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been really, really great. Great scenario. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was good fun. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for engaging with it in such a honest and open way, because I think it could have been a bit weird, couldn't it? But we got to the bit where you want to be ground down into a sound timer, so that's really good.
Finally managed to hand that one in.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite in writing, but it's definitely somewhere now, and people know it.
But that will be all for us this week. Thank you very much again, and have a good one. We'll catch you in a bit.
Bye.